All right, I'm going to do three little articles in this video here. It should be pretty short. First one is the most frightening. Ebola ruled out, that should be in quotes, as passenger dies on Nigeria flight to JFK. And you'll see why I put quotes around ruled out. It's a complete joke. And this is the picture that they put with the article. Obviously, the first thing you notice is the stop the flights guy in the gear. Look at the girl next to him, putting up a peace sign, her hips cocked off to the side with her little boyfriend or whoever taking the picture. Like, oh, this is so cool. How weird to be next to this guy. I mean, the guy's all geared up, obviously fighting the good fight. And she just, oh, hey, take a picture of me. Disgusting. So what's wrong with this country? A lot of stuff's wrong with this country. That's another. All right, on to the article. Passenger died on a Nigeria to JFK flight. So the guy died on a flight after a vomiting fit Thursday. Let that first sentence sink in. Passenger died on a Nigeria to JFK flight after a vomiting fit Thursday. Okay? And a top lawmaker said officials gave the corpse only a cursory exam before declaring that the victim did not have Ebola. Okay. Let that sentence sink in. Peter King, who's one of the worst human beings on the planet, wrote a letter to Homeland Security and Customs Border Protection that the handling of the remains exposed serious flaws at the airport preparedness for an Ebola outbreak. Between 70 and 100 passengers a day arrive at JFK from the Ebola epicenter countries of Liberia, Sierra Leone, and Guinea. King noted. And they have access to public restrooms and mingle with other travelers before their first screening. Not that the screening really matters, because it wouldn't have caught Duncan, and obviously didn't catch this guy because he died on the plane. But still, that's a terrible. All right, ready? Here we go. Like, it's amazing. So this is amazing. The passenger was vomiting in his seat and died sometime before the plane landed around 6 a.m. The source. The crew contacted the CDC, whose officials boarded the plane as about 145 worried is probably the understatement of this whole article. Passengers remained on board, federal law enforcement source said. The door to the terminal was left open. So the CDC enters the plane and just leaves the doors completely open, which a lot of first responders found alarming because they're rational people. So Peter King says, and this guy's pure poison. He's the epitome of evil, and even he has a problem with this. So the CDC went on the plane, examined the dead body, and said the person did not have Ebola. I don't know what to say to that. How could they possibly know that? They go on the plane and there's a dead guy covered in his own vomit. They look at him and say, nope, that's not Ebola. Looks like, and that's not Ebola vomit. No tests, no nothing. They go on the plane, they look at the dead guy and say, nope, not Ebola. It was, I was told, a cursory examination. Port Authority cops and personnel from Customs and Border Protection were there. Their concern was, how could you tell so quickly? Obviously! What adds to the concern is how wrong the CDC has been over the past few weeks. CDC declined to comment on the passenger. It's unbelievable. Absolutely unbelievable. All right, like I said, there's 3 articles here. So the next one, also from New York, 911 dispatchers forbidden from saying Ebola on the radio. City officials are so jittery about causing widespread Ebola panic that 911 dispatchers have been forbidden from dropping any E-bombs over the radio, the Post has learned. This is the New York Post, so you have to expect language like E-bombs. It says an FDNY memo instructs all personnel to use more vague terms when discussing the deadly disease which is threatening to become a global pandemic. From the memo, it says, at no point shall a dispatcher transmit over the radio any message containing the word Ebola or related terminology. Dispatchers must instead use the code words FT, as in fever, travel, to indicate that a 911 caller has a fever and a history of travel to West Africa. So they give an example. Engine XXX, utilize universal precautions. You are responding to an FT incident. Dispatchers are now ordered to say. Source of the directive is meant to minimize fear of a citywide outbreak, since the emergency radio channels are closely monitored by civilian hobbyists and members of the media. Wouldn't want the truth getting out there, but of course, you put this report out, the memo's public, so now anybody who's read this and members of the media, when they hear an FT, are going to know exactly what that is, so it kind of defeats the purpose. And it said we have had about 133 calls since July concerning patients with possible Ebola symptoms. All 133 have been false alarms. But at least one company, the city's main supplier of body bags, thank you New York Post, is ready to pitch in should the outbreak turn into an all-out crisis. We have more than 100,000 bags on hand, assured company Vice President Bashir Mahar. Last night, the Department of Education sent a letter to school principals containing Ebola information and instructions on how to deal with possible cases. The letter said that if a student who had traveled to an Ebola-stricken nation shows symptoms, he or she should be seen immediately by the school nurse. And then finally, Ebola TV series in the works from Linda Obst and Ridley Scott. Doesn't say if it's going to be a reality show. I can't imagine it would be. But at the same time, I can't imagine the CDC walking on a plane, looking at a dead Nigerian covered in vomit, and just declaring, nothing to see here, no Ebola. You guys are all free to leave. Continue on your journey, passengers of this plane.